There's a whole bunch of us for the whole city. There's six of us. We got this. And we have one sergeant guy that comes along with us too and make sure we have what we need. But there's 6 of us. And that means, and really what that means is there's 3 because we're teamed up. So there's really 3. There's one shift that works at nights. Now we kind of changed our hours around a little bit. There's a whole bunch of, it's very fluid. We're transitioning quite a bit. But those folks work from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning. And then there's two teams on days. It just seems like we're a little bit busier on day shift. One team works from 10 in the morning till 6 p.m. And now with the new things that I'm going to share with you in a little bit, me and my new partner, Marty, are working from 9 a.m. till about 5-ish in the afternoon, somewhere in there. How do we get started? I think this is real important. Like I said, we got 0 training. Marty's even sharing with us. He goes, hey, you got to tell her how in the fire department we don't get training and dealing with persons with mental illness. We don't get training in that. But how it happened for us is something has to happen. And I say that because y'all are using really nice terms and being politically correct. But with us, we got to screw stuff up and then things change for us, okay? That's the reality. So basically what happened with us is, I say us, law enforcement. Up north there was a case where a family had called. They had a teenage son who was was suicidal off his medication, in crisis. They called. Officers responded, and at that time had the same amount of training I did in mental illness. They responded there, and the child had gone into the house, into a kitchen, and had a butcher knife, but he was threatening himself. He wanted to commit suicide. The family said he's in there. They're hysterical. They're crying. The officers go in, and they're doing their best that they can. And the culture is to close that gap and get hands-on and restrain that person, hold on to them, keep them from hurting themselves. So I guess you can imagine as they're closing that gap to keep him from hurting himself, he starts doing like this. And the knife goes down. Guess what happens? Yeah, he ended up getting shot. The officers were justified. They were worried about themselves. So what do we teach now is distance. Distance is our friend. Let them be over there. I've had people throw chairs, and it seems like most people, I don't know what it is, there's kind of like a science to it, but it seems like when a lot of people go into crisis, it's spaghetti day, because I've had spaghetti thrown at me 3 times now. I don't know if there's a denominator there, but it happens. But after that, we just back up. I had a lady so psychotic, took a chair and threw it so hard up against the drywall, it actually stuck into the wall. I'm like, Ernie, bad. That's bad, my other partner. So that kind of happens. And then something happened, like I said, then in 2003, Houston is referred to as the grand big daddy rabbit of CIT or mental health training. And they created this a very small program, and they brought it down to San Antonio, and with like a couple officers from Bexar County Sheriff's Department, San Antonio Police Department, set up a little class at San Antonio State Hospital, and kind of had some people do some training there. They said, this is a good idea. And at that time, they said, well, if we can just get 10% trained, then we're good, 10%. And it kind of just grew and grew from there to the point where San Antonio became the first city under the leadership of Chief McManus to say, we need 100%. We need everybody trained in de-escalation techniques. We need everybody to know how to respond to these calls, no matter what side of the town they live on, what area they work in, regardless of the demographics of that neighborhood. Everybody needs to be trained in mental health. So that happened, and of course sheriff's departments came along as well and trained 100% of their deputies now. Based on the Memphis model, first class happened in 2003. I went to the CIT class in 2005, and it was on the Thursday of the class that there's a little blonde about this tall, late 60s. She walked up and down the aisle. At that time during that class, it was just policemen in the room, and she was unscripted, and she started talking about her son. And I have her permission to talk about Jeff. Jeff's 6'4", schizoaffective disorder. If you talked about policemen, medication, but doctors, paramedics, no, everybody loves the fire department, I got it, okay. But he became physically violent. And her reality, she just shared her reality. Her reality was, because there was no mental health unit at the time, her reality was, thank you guys for what you do, but at some point I realize and understand that Jeff will probably get so violent that he'll hurt me, and you may have to come and kill my son. I just want you to let you know that I understand, and I want you to go home safely to your family. And I was a young parent at the time, and I'm like, that's your reality? That's what you're expecting of me? And then I did something to my partner after that, after signing up for the class, is we went back to work and handled our first major accident, and we went car to car, finishing up the paperwork. I looked at him, and the most scary thing I always say to my partners that they realize is, I looked at him and said, "Hey, Ernie, I got an idea." And he's like, "Oh no, that's a bad thing." So I made an appointment with the chief, and I said, "Hey, Ernie, we're gonna go talk to the chief. We're gonna create our own first mental health unit of this department." And he said, that's not gonna happen, but okay. So we made an appointment with the chief. He actually agreed to see us. And I said, "Hey, chief, we got this great idea. We're gonna wear plain clothes, drive an unmarked car, drive around the city, just tell people, keep them out of jail." No, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming. And I have this little issue with, I don't do real good with no's when I believe in something and I believe it should be done. So I went to our probate judge, and went to the president of NAMI, and went to some other community folks. And I said, "Can you believe we don't have a mental health unit in this city?" They're like, "You're right." I'm like, "I know." So they went and knocked on the chief's door and said, "Chief, why don't we have a mental health unit in this city?" And he said, "You know what? I got a couple guys that probably be really good for that job." And he called us in the next day and looked at us, and he looked, "You ever do that to me again?" And I'm like, so the reason I'm very happy to still have a job and be amongst you today. And that's the reason we're here. But that led to 2 guys, and we did it for 2 years, just us working the whole city and into the county and everything else. Since then, we did this really cool thing. We created it just kind of grows. What are the needs? How many people have children in here? Okay. Anybody have children in the San Antonio school districts? No? Yes? Okay. Well, the reason that's important is we said, you know what? Let's do something with the school district police. Let's do training with those folks. And the reason that came about was a school police officer called us and said, "We got this problem with this constant kid in elementary. It rains outside. She jumps on her desk. We have to go in there and grab her, and she keeps scratching the officers, hitting the teachers when we do that." And I'm thinking to myself, well, you're grabbing her. She's upset. Something's going on. You can't grab her. And they wanted to charge her with assault on a police officer. She's in elementary school. We actually did an assessment with her, brought our counselor from the Center for Healthcare Services. Come to find out, she was in that little storm, what do you call it? Katrina? Good. She was in Katrina, and she was on the roof and watched her family members be washed away off the roof. So every time it drizzled outside, guess what she started seeing? And so she freaked out. We'd get on desk, and us being great policemen, what do? We grabbed her and tried to hold her. Not a good thing to do. So we started creating this class here, this Children in Crisis Intervention Team Training. So basically we have professionals dealing with child and adolescent issues. Clarity's been a great player with that, partnering with us and sending counselors and speakers. And we deal with child and adolescent issues dealing with the school police. And that was really good. And so these are old numbers, and I left it up there for a reason because we've really matured from this. We've got almost, we're about 96% trained on our police department now. There's still those holdouts. "I ain't going to that class." Okay, yeah, right. So we have those guys. But this one's really interesting. If you look at the last one here, our call takers, our dispatchers, why would we teach them in de-escalation techniques and identification of mental illness and those kind of things? Why would that be important, do you think? Yeah, that's the first contact somebody that's in crisis or has a family member calling for services or help has the first contact. And that's where we realized we got to get it from the very beginning and dispatch it appropriately, get the right information, and do the right thing for that family. So we started training all of our dispatchers. Collaboration, we work with a whole bunch of different people, and that's a really cute word, collaboration, but we take it very serious and very literal. When you're dealing with entities like police departments, fire departments, or whatever, if you go do a training somewhere like I'm doing here, the department feels as though they've contributed because they're paying my salary for being here today. Okay? So if we want to put on a class, a 40-hour class, that's 40 hours of service away from answering calls for service. If you see the billboards, we're almost several hundred officers short right now. So pull me off the street, don't answer calls, it gets expensive on both parts of that. But we get people like the Methodist hospital system. One thing we decided to do when we started doing this kind of training was we wanted to get it out of that sterile environment of a police academy, a fire academy, and blank walls and comfortable this and that. We actually, somebody from the Methodist hospital system, who is now the president of NAMI, suggested using her church. Great idea. So we actually use they lease a whole church for us to use, away from the police department, away from the fire department. We use the sanctuary as our classroom. Typically we have about 85 to 100, I'll say officers, but adult learners that go through the class, and we'll talk about who goes to the class later on. And then we used all the different rooms as breakout sessions, and we'll talk about why we use those. But they're a big part because they rent the whole church for us. Also, they pay for all our binding. All of our manuals are about that thick. It's like getting a psychology course, 2 semesters and 40 hours. It's quite a bit of information. People like La Paz, University Hospital, NAMI. Reason what we do is we try to keep our officers captive audience. So we get those folks to actually pay for catering all week. So the officers don't even have to leave, and that way we can cut our lunch breaks into 30-minute sessions, and we can do that much more and give them more information, and I can hear myself talk even more longer that way. It's really good for me. And then, of course, Clarity. They always support us in every fashion that you can think of, sending speakers and counselors and materials. So the training, comprised of instructors from several different law enforcement and this and that. Interesting concept, but it's real. Typically, whenever we teach a class, it'll be an SAPD officer, a Bexar County Sheriff's deputy, co-teaching a class. We have a resource class that we actually have one of our officers and one of our paramedics come in there and talk about different issues, things that we didn't know were issues. And we have them actually sharing different things that officers should know and things we thought that EMS was doing, that they thought we were doing. They thought we were searching prisoners or patients before they transported them. We weren't doing any of that. And so basically what happening was they were getting these patients who were suicidal, putting them in the back of ambulances, and guns were falling out of their pockets, butcher knives out of their pant legs, all kinds of things were happening like that. So it's really good collaboration there. So the class looks like this. It's 40 hours of actual instruction. We do it at the church. The biggest thing is the role plays, because we have people from, we have experts from the VA coming in talking. The first day is pretty much law enforcement led because we talk about response to these situations. We talk about de-escalation and the active listening skills. Basically everything the negotiators use on a hostage situation, we teach those to the officers to use throughout the week, okay? And then the rest of the week we have actually smart people talking. We have people from the VA come out and talk. We get the policemen. That's pretty funny too, but that's okay. We have people from the VA come out and talk. Our police psychologists, they actually come out and give a course on recognition of symptomology of schizophrenia, bipolar, what PTSD looks like. And the biggest thing is we learn how to talk to it. We learn how to deal with those situations. We learn how to de-escalate that. We get the understanding of the foundation of what led that person to that point because they're off their medication, or maybe they had a situation that triggered that. We teach them how to de-escalate those situations. The hands-on instruction, and the biggest thing is when they go through our class, they actually get a separate peace officer license. They actually get a mental health peace officer license. Very important. One of the biggest things, you've heard of Kush, you heard all the synthetic marijuana, all the stuff that's out there, whatever. That's kind of stuff we deal with now. But it's led to the Center for Healthcare Services partnering so closely with us. Now that we have a 601 North Frio is our local mental health authority, they basically have a one-stop shop for police. Okay, so if I have to, maybe I've got a prisoner that punched me and then he got hit with a baton or whatever happens, they have a PA on staff that can actually do sutures, immediate kind of care kind of thing, that kind of thing right there in that facility. We can also take our patients that are under emergency detention to that facility, and they can de-escalate them there and get them stabilized, and if they need to go somewhere else, they can get them wherever else they need to be from there. But also we have this unit here, the sobering and detox. Is everybody familiar with that unit? Anybody not familiar with it? So basically what it looks like is it's one entrance for the police. They have, typically they'll have 1 or 2 paramedics on staff. They have a couple of security in there, and they have mats on the floor. The reason the mats are on the floor because if they're elevated or like a real bed and it looks really nice like the Hilton, they fall out of those things and they get hurt, and that's a bad thing. And basically what they'll do is once they get in there, we have a sobering portion where they go in there and they can be drunk, they can be high on this junk that they smoke, stuff they put up their nose, whatever they're on, and while they're there, they'll give them crackers and water and a mat to lay on, and they'll just offer them opportunity to sober up a little bit, safe place to be, they'll give them a blanket. And once they've sobered up a little bit to actually have an interview with them, they'll have somebody from the detox portion come and actually do motivational intervention to try to get them into the inpatient detox program within the facility. Not a lockdown. If they want to leave, they'll open the door and you can go. But we keep persevering to get them in there as many times Typically what we found, if they've gone through it 4 to 5 times, we've had success. So we know it's going to take multiple times to get them through the program to help them out, kind of thing. There's just kind of like, this is our bragging right rooms here. Everybody's like, yeah, we got to pee. So this is kind of stuff that we've done. We've gone to these different conferences. And what interesting has happened is a couple things. In 2009, if you look up here, they had an international conference. Somebody made a point that we were the last in funding. We're number 1 in the least amount of funding in the nation. Yay. Anybody know who that was before us? Take a guess. What's that? Baltimore. Wow, that was kind of a random answer. Usually I get like Arkansas or something random like that, but it's Hawaii. I guess if you can surf, no depression, I don't know. But we're here. They basically said, let's have an international conference, because this type of training that we're doing is being done all over the world. And so they wanted to go someplace where we get the least amount of funding, but they're doing the most with it. So they came to San Antonio because of our Sobering and Detox, Haven for Hope, SAPD, Bexar County specific, are being recognized nationally for the type of training we're doing and de-escalation, and also the least number of use of force in the nation. You know, that's our claim to fame. It really is. Where are we at from here now? I mean, we've been in existence for a little over 8 years now. We're still doing about every 3 months. We're doing another CIT class, and I promise you, I'd tell you a little bit about who goes to these classes. And now we do a lot of law enforcement, both San Antonio Police Department and Bexar County, but it's kind of expanded now. This last class we did in January, we had a city manager, a chief of police, and 3 officers from Iowa go through our class. We get a lot of federal law enforcement. We get some NSA. We had NSA officer go through our class. We get a lot of military police go through our class. And we also, now we've opened it up to about 15 spots for paramedics. So they're co-learning with officers, going on these calls, because that's what happens anyway. When they call, it's typically fire department, police, EMS, going to these calls, and now we're able to communicate and we speak each other's same language of how to help the family that's in crisis. We're speaking the same language. Expansion of SAPD Mental Health Detail, that was kind of a joke for a long time, but now the emphasis now is, the priority is mental health in law enforcement. It really is. I mean, I'm not just saying that. You watch any of the news, everything's about de-escalation. You hear that word all the time. It's one of the highest on the chief's agenda right now is mental health and services for the homeless and veterans and persons with mental illness. We've actually pulled, since we're short almost 300 officers on the streets just to meet our minimum manning, they've actually pulled officers from our bike unit. They've asked them who would be interested in working with us, and they found out it was me, and it was kind of like a little hesitation there. Like, I got to listen to that all day. But we've actually got some bike officers. They're used to dealing with the homeless. They're used to dealing with persons with mental illness, because it seems like they magnetize the downtown for whatever reason. And so they do a really good job. They're doing really good things with us. And we work with the community a lot.